You need to know this. With less than a month to go until our nation hits its debt ceiling, which could trigger a global economic collapse, and with the nation's top credit agency warning us that our credit rating could get downgraded if politicians block it, House Republicans are trying to sink the ship. Majority Leader Eric Cantor warned Democrats yesterday that his party will not support a debt limit increase next month unless they get a list of their demands met. In other words, Republicans are willing to crash the system, or at least play chicken as if they were, if they don't get what they want, including a balanced budget amendment, cuts on programs for working and poor people, and a new rule in Congress that would require a two-thirds majority for any new tax increases on rich people. Basically, all provisions that continue Reagan's supply-side economics that have thrown our nation into this disaster in the first place. Even the Chamber of Commerce is begging the Republicans not to play games with the debt ceiling. So why are they doing this? And will it end up hurting them more in the end? For more on this, I'm joined from New York by Payne, founder of the Agenda Project and former senior strategist at the Roosevelt Institute. Erica, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great to have you with us. When push comes to shove, do you think that the Republicans will really bring down the global economy if they don't get what they want?
I don't think it really matters if push comes to shove. I think what they've done already is really problematic. They've clearly demonstrated that they have no business running a country. This is not something that you play with. Raising the debt limit is not an option. You know, if a tree falls on your house and you need to raise your credit card limit another few $1,000s to pay for the tree that just landed on your house, you do it. Do you like doing it? No. Is it something that's necessary to do? Absolutely. And so the fact that they're saying, in essence, they're not going to fix the roof that just fell on our house because of some theoretical problem that we have is irresponsible and frankly ridiculous.
And one of the things that I find really curious, and maybe you can give me some insight into this, Erica, is why is it that everything is future-paced off this present moment? Whenever the debt ceiling is talked about, or whenever the debt is talked about, this $14 trillion debt, it's, by Republicans, it's talked about as Obama's debt. By the news media, it's talked about as something that future generations are going to pay off. Nobody's pointing out that this is a debt that Ronald Reagan began running up, and that was mostly run up by two George Bushes. Why is it not referred to as the Republican debt?
What remember is that debt can be a useful tool. If you just think about your own life. I went into debt when I went to graduate school. Lots of people I know went into debt to go to college or trade school or things like that. You go into debt to buy a house. So there are things that debt can be used for, and it's not entirely inappropriate to use debt to do some things. After World War II, for example, our country went into, or during World War II, we went into tremendous debt because we had a battle that we needed to fight and we needed to win. Now, the problem here is not the debt itself. It's that consistently Washington takes on a debt that it's unwilling to pay for in the future. And so that's the problem that we're having now. We've got tax revenues at a low while our deficits are going higher and higher and our debt's going higher. So when we decided to go to war in Afghanistan, whether you agreed with that policy or not, as a nation, our representatives and our president made that decision. Ultimately, somebody has to pay for it. Those two things should have been coupled rather than just going to war and deciding that we're never going to pay for it.
Yeah, and this goes all the way back to Reagan's Star Wars program and his running up almost $3 trillion in debt with, well, $2 trillion, taking our debt up to $3 trillion with these unfunded programs. 7 out of 10 Americans think that the debt ceiling should not be raised. Do you think that is what emboldening the Republicans, or is that the consequence of Republican rhetoric being so well promoted on talk radio and, frankly, on network television?
Right. I think it's really mutually reinforcing. The Republicans really like to pull out the debt issue as long as they never have to admit that part of the debt issue is their issue. So keep in mind, during the Bush presidency, the debt went from $5 trillion to $10 trillion. It's hard to even say that big of a number. It's so ridiculous. And so they bring that out. One of the issues is, when you hear let's raise the debt ceiling, and you've heard for, the entire campaign cycle and going into the last 2 years that the debt is a huge problem, the natural reaction to that is absolutely we can't raise the debt ceiling. Keep in mind, Americans are out there raising families, helping their kids with their homework, and hopefully either going to work or looking for work every day. So the amount of time that they have to clue into this stuff is limited. The people like me who work in politics, we have all day long, lucky us to listen to these kinds of things. So when you hear let's raise the debt ceiling, when you've heard for 2 years that the debt's too high, of course your immediate reaction is no. Now if you go in closer and you explain to people what that's for and why it's necessary, the numbers start to change. But what I would suggest is that the White House and liberals and responsible Republicans who know that this is a step we need to take, they need to start changing the way they talk about it, because what we're really saying is America going to default on its debt? Right. America has never in its history defaulted to its creditors. Are we going to be that country?
Yeah,
is that what we've come to? And that's really what the issue is.
Yeah, it's like saying, okay, we've got a $10,000 line of credit on our credit card, but when it hits $4,000, we're not going to pay it anymore, but we keep running it up to 6 or 7 or 8. In any case, Eric, thank you so much for being with us. Great insight. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Thanks for having me.